Here we go. Recording in progress. Everybody's welcome to the Thursday night Shiur. Tonight's Shiur is Shiur really on at least three things. Number one, it's Parsha Tazrea. Not a very large Parsha, very interesting in some ways. And Parsha Tazrea is the Parsha of the week. But we have three Sifrei Torah to be taken out this Shabbos. Unusual. Why? Because not only is it Parsha Tazrea, but it's also Parshas HaChodesh, which means that it's the final Parsha of the four Parshios that are prior to Pesach, which is Parshas HaChodesh, which begins with Perek Yud Beis in Shmos, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem. We'll come back to that later. In addition, the third Sefer Torah that we're going to have this week is going to be the Sefer Torah in which we read the Maftir. The Maftir is going to be all about Chodesh, because someone's making a little bit of a racket. So you'll have to mute everybody, and if you want to speak, you'll have to let me know that you unmute yourself. But we're going to try to arrange that we're going to mute everybody right now. But if you want to speak, just unmute yourself. Okay? So now we're muting everybody, so we have it nice and quiet. There we go. So in case you want to speak out from this point on, you'll have to unmute your phone. Okay. So the third Sefer Torah that we're going to have this Shabbos is the Sefer Torah in which we read the Maftir of Rosh Chodesh, because this Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's Shabbos, Parshas Tazrea, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Parshas HaChodesh. So there are a lot of things to speak about tonight in the Parsha. I don't want to neglect Parshas Tazrea. It's the kind of Parsha that people are not very familiar with. It seems to talk a lot about things that don't have a direct relevance to us, because it's dealing with what we know as the terminology of Negoim. Negoim means that it speaks about those things which are a nega, a plague. We make the joke always that the English terminology of the word nega, which is related, negoim, which is related to the English word negative, it's a negative thing. It's a nega. It's a thing that is not welcomed amongst humanity. We don't want to have plagues. We don't want to be touched by negoim, but the negoim specifically that we're speaking about in this week's parsha is the nega of tzaras. Our Chazal point out that last week in Parsha Shmini, we spoke about the kosher animals. Which animals, which fish, which birds are permitted to be eaten by a human being. This week, we're speaking about human beings themselves. That which in last week was either kosher or not kosher in terms of the food we eat, this week we're speaking about what's kosher or not kosher in terms of the actions we do or the speech that we make. When the world was created by Hashem in Chumash Bereshis, the animals, fish, and actually it goes in the other way around. It goes the birds and fish, the fish and the birds, and then the mammals, and then human beings. They were created in that order. First came the fish and the birds, and then came the animals, and then came humans. So too, when it talks about the responsibilities of the animals we can eat, which ones are kosher animals, which ones are not kosher animals, and we're speaking now about humans and what actions are kosher, it follows the pattern of the creation of the world. The creation of the world had its creation in terms of first the fish and birds and animals, and then humans, and so too in Parsha, in Chumash Vayikra, when it speaks about coming close to Hashem, we speak first about the way we come close through either the bringing of karbanos, or through the refraining from doing those actions which will bring about tzaras. Now, the word tzaras itself is not translatable in a simple way. Most English translations call tzaras leprosy, but it's not leprosy. We have to be very clear about that. Tsaras is definitely not leprosy, Hansen's disease, because that's a progressively debilitating disease, which ultimately leads to, if it's not stopped by medicine or other things, it's going to lead to the progression of limbs falling off and death. It ultimately is a terrible, terrible disease. The world has basically been cured from leprosy, but we haven't been cured from tsaras. Tsaras is not leprosy. The best definition I've come across is the definition of Rav Shamshu Ferl Hirsch, who says tsaras is a physical manifestation of a spiritual malaise. That's the way to think of tsaras. It's a physical manifestation on the human being of a spiritual illness, something that brought about the negative or nega on the person's body, demonstrative of some fault. The Gemara has a long list of those things which possibly could cause tsaras. We're familiar mostly with the speaking of Lashon Hara. That Lashon Hara is what brings about leprosy, not leprosy, but tsaras. Why is that? Because the issue with tsaras is that if a person has tsaras, they're required to, unbelievable, quarantine themselves. They have to stay away from others, not because it's catching, because tsaras is not the leprosy that's catching, but because you don't want the other human beings to be exposed to the person who said the Lashon Hara. You know, Lashon Hara, what it does is, if you have two people speaking about a third, so basically the two people that are speaking about the third person, what they're doing is they're ostracizing the third person. It's as if he's not part of the group. He's chutz lamachane, so to speak. If two people are speaking about a third, the third is ostracized. And amazingly, the punishment of speaking about negatively about another human being is that you are ostracized. You're put away from three camps. There are three camps amongst the Jewish people. There's the Machane Shechina, the camp of the divine presence, which is where the Mishkan of Beis HaMikdash is, or Machane Leviya, where the Levium camp around Machane Shechina, and finally Machane Yisrael. And Tzarua, the one who is tsaras, is sent out of all three camps. You ostracize another human being by speaking negatively about that person, negatively about that other person. You, in turn, are ostracized by having to go out of all three camps. You can't be in the camp of the Jewish people. It's an amazing thing. The concepts that Hashem is teaching us are concepts that are basic to our decency as a human being. We think sometimes about tsaras as being part of the heebie-jeebie world because we don't have connection with it. Question, is that to our benefit? Is it to our benefit that we do not have tsaras today? Many people might go and say, yeah, who needs tsaras? But maybe it's the other way around. There's so many things are, when one starts thinking in a Torah fashion, we see that things are very often the other way around. Question, would we not be somewhat better off if the moment someone spoke ill of another, zap on the hand, look at that. There's a little spot that's growing as I speak about the other person, which immediately brings to mind the fault that one has done. We often think that, oh, thank God we don't have tsaras today. But maybe if we could see the immediacy of the schar va'onesh, it would be somewhat to our benefit. There's a famous philosophical question, which is, why is it that when I do something wrong, I'm not immediately given a punishment? Because if I would be given a punishment, of course, I wouldn't do that thing wrong. I once had an incident. A friend of mine came into my house on Shabbos. I was a youngster, maybe, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. from what I recall. And he came into my house. We were best of friends. And he came into my house on Shabbos, and I was in my room, and we were playing a chess game or something. I don't remember exactly what. And he startled me. He came out and said, he said, Moshe, there really is no God. He said to me, there really. I said, what are you talking about? But Bisma Sugar, what are you crazy? We've been in yeshiva together all our lives. We're now in the 8th, 9th grade, whatever it was. And now you're telling me that you're coming up with this Mishigas. He says, I'll prove it to you. I said, what do you mean you prove it to me? How can you prove such a thing? He says, watch. What's what I'm going to do? He gets up, goes over to the light switch, and turns it on. I said, what are you doing? It's Shabbos. Shabbos. It's terrible. What'd you do? And he turns it off. I said, what? That's terrible. Why did you do that? He said, I want to prove to you there's no God. I said, what are you talking about? So in his simplistic thinking, he said, doesn't it say in the Torah that if you're Mechalel Shabbos, you're going to die? Look, nothing happened. Here I am, the same old guy playing chess with you. Nothing happened. It shows there is no God because there's no punishment. I said, no, it doesn't work like that. Oh, yeah, that's what they all say. It doesn't work like that. By the way, wasn't that the exact same thing that the Nachash did with Adam and Chava? Wasn't that the same thing? Remember, Adam made a mistake by telling Chava that not only aren't you allowed to eat from the tree, he said you're not allowed to even touch the tree because you may die. That was Adam's mistake. According to the Orach Chaim, that was Adam's mistake. That he should never have told her that Hashem said you can't touch the tree. He should have said, Hashem said you can't eat from the tree, but I have put a rabbinic enactment on it and said it's muktzah and you can't even touch it. But chas v'shalom, it's not the same thing, right? So the snake said to Chava, hey, isn't it true that God said you can't even touch the tree? She said, yeah. So he pushed her against the tree because he said, God said the day you touch it, you're dead. And you see, you didn't die. So it shows you that there is no God. That's what the snake said. And here this guy comes into my house, he does this, making believe there is no God because it wasn't instantly punished. But that's the nature of Hashem's relationship with us. Because Hashem wants us to free willingly choose the right path. If the zap would come immediately, there would be no free will. We would have no opportunity to develop a spiritual sense of corrective behaviors. We would not be able to function. We would be robots. Because if we didn't do what was required, we'd either immediately get great reward if we did do what was required, or great punishment if we didn't. And it doesn't work that way. The reward of Shabbos is Shabbos. But that doesn't come overnight. Did we appreciate Shabbos when we were 15? Did we recognize the holiness and the brilliance that Hashem gave us such a mitzvah that gives meaning to all the days of the week? The Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal, says in the Mesilas Yesharim, he describes the concept of Chilul Hashem and Chilul Shabbos. The word Chalol means empty, to make something empty. A Chalol is when something is empty, it's a Chalal. So he describes what Chilul Shabbos is. He says, take a wheel, a primitive round wooden wheel. And if you have just a round wheel and you put anything to rest on that wheel, such as a wagon, it'll crush the wheel. It won't turn, it'll crush. How do you make it the wheel doesn't get destroyed? So what you do is you put a hub in the wheel. And from the hub, you extend 6 spokes, equidistant from the hub. One end of the spoke is in the hub. The other end of the spoke is touching the wheel in 6 points around the hub. Now, when the weight goes on the wheel, the weight goes into the hub and the hub distributes it and distributes the weight. This is the physics of a wheel. It distributes the weight in all directions around the wheel so that the wheel doesn't collapse, so that all the weight isn't borne in one spot, but rather the hub acts as an opposite pressure to send the energy out to the sides and back into the center. And so the wheel doesn't collapse. What happens when you take the spokes out? You take the spokes out of the hub, the wheel collapses. If you took the hub away, the wheel collapses because there's no center force to distribute it out to the outside. Chilul Shabbos means you have the 7 spokes in the wheel instead of 6, because Shabbos is one of them. And when the week goes on, all the week is pressing against the hub, and the hub distributes the energy to the 6 spokes outside. And consequently, all the days bear and support the Shabbos, and the Shabbos supports the wheel. And Chilul Shabbos means I took the hub out. Now there's a hole. And when there's no hole, the whole week collapses. Why do you think we say Hayom Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Shlishi b'Shabbos? Because the spokes are attached to the hub. And consequently, when we have a Shabbos and we appreciate it, and it takes time, because what happens is that we develop a sense of right and wrong, and we see the brilliance and value of the rest of Shabbos. And consequently, it doesn't come instantly in the youthful age. It builds on us and it grows on us, and we get to appreciate and see over time. So, and the reward goes throughout our lives. The reward of Shabbos goes throughout our lives. Imagine what reward comes and what destruction comes when the power of speech is either properly used or misused. Life and death is in the hands of the tongue. And consequently, Hashem is giving us a gift of tzaras. The gift is, I misspoke, famous term that's used today. When somebody wants to say he didn't tell the truth, he doesn't want to say I lied. He says, I misspoke. Misspoke. You missed the spoke. You didn't get into the hub. You made a mistake. You made a mistake, and you made a chilul Hashem because you didn't support your actions through the hub. You misspoke. And consequently, when a person realizes that, it'll bring them to a greater recognition of, over time, I can get better. And isn't it fascinating that when someone gets the tzaras, they don't go to the doctor. They don't go to the doctor to get healed. They go to the Kohen. They go to the one who has kavana, from the word kivun. He's going to set us on the right direction so that we don't misspeak. And consequently, we don't say the wrong things and things that shouldn't go further than my mind. And even that needs to be worked on. So consequently, tzaras is really totally misunderstood, and it needs a deep understanding. I should point out that at the beginning of the Sedra, when it speaks about Parshas Tazrea, it's not talking about Lashon Hara at the beginning at all. On the contrary, it's talking about the birth of life. Isha ki Tazrea v'yoldo zochar. If a woman gives seed and has a child, a son, or an akeva, or a female, and we see the bringing of the karbanos, the coming close. And we have to keep in mind that there are some things in life that are totally out of our control. There are some things that are in our control. but some things that we have no control over. Life and death, we have no control over. Our behavior, we have control over. A Torah personality man and a Torah personality woman who devotes their youthful energy years to building that Torah personality, ultimately will find their relationship under the chuppah as being joined together by Hashem, famous word that we say about Ish and Isha. They're both the exact same word, except for the Yud in Ish and the Hey in Isha. And that means God is combining the Ish, the fire of humanity, together in order to make husband and wife. And when they come together under our Kadosh Baruch Hu's venue, under the chuppah and so on, so now, even though they're physically going to be relating to each other, and until now they had control over that. Until now, it was difficult, the teenage years, growing up, the early 20s, very difficult. Self-control. The Jewish people are unique in this. We're like one in a million, doesn't exist in the rest of the world. The purity of the behavior of a Torah man and a Torah woman. And when they do finally come together, so a child is created, but there's no control over that. Once the child has been created, it's a process of inevitability. No control over the birth process. Once the birth process is put in motion, no one has control over it. It's going to happen at its own time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu so decrees. And a woman may feel, I have no control. I have no control in life of anything. And therefore, that's a negative. What do you mean you have no control over anything? You have a lot of control over a lot of things. You have control over whether you want to start the birth process. You have control over your emotions. You have control over whether you want to be moral or immoral. You have that control. But once the Torah blesses the marriage and children are created, we don't have any control over that process. Kadosh Baruch Hu puts that in motion, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And consequently, after birth, she has to bring a korban to come close to Hashem again, because since she went through a process of I have no control is tameh. That's why when we come close to a dead body, a person, they think to themselves, we have no control over life, we have no control over death. Not true. We have no control over death. That's true. But that doesn't mean we have no control over life. On the contrary, that's the only thing we don't have control over. But life and what we do with it, we do have control. So the birth process, we don't have control over. The death process, we don't have control over. Isn't it interesting that both of them bring tumah? The birth brings tumah, the death brings tumah. Because in both cases, we're not in control of anything over there. Says Rav Shamshir Ferel Hirsch, that's why we bring a korban chatos. That's why we bring a korban ola. We want to be ola. We want to be close to Hashem. And we have to recognize that the thought of not having any self-control in birth or death means that we have no control from birth to death. Oh, please. Please, if we have no control of anything in between birth and death, we're going to end up with a world like we have now. A crazy, mixed up, upside down, out of control, mindless world where people do say and act upon things that don't make any sense in terms of a decency of humanity, where all the so-called rights are wrongs, like prisoners' rights. It's wrong. You shouldn't be in prison to begin with. Immoral behavior rights. I don't even want to use the term that they use. It's immoral behavior. Rights? You have rights? What rights? It's not right. It's wrong. prisoners' rights, whatever. So Tazrea is an introduction to the moral rectitude that the Jewish people have over the unique process of speech. And as we learned at the beginning, Chumash Bereshis, speech is what separates the human kingdom from the rest of the animal kingdom. Intelligent speech. Okay, I'd like to go to our second sefer. Of course, in the order of the way things are, we're going to have three Sifrei Torah. We have, of course, the Parsha Shavua, and then we have the Parsha HaChodesh, and then we have, of course, Rosh Chodesh. The Luach, when speaking about these three Parshios, it's very interesting to note how it tells us of how to read and give the aliyahs for these Parshios. It says as follows. I'll read you. It's a very interesting series of statements. It says, we bring out the concept of tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem. Many of us are familiar with this. Tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem means that which is usual and that which is not usual. The one that is more usual, tadir, the one that is more common, comes first. So now we have three Sifrei Torah, right? The first one, of course, is Parsha Shavua. That's the most common of all. Every week there's a Parsha Shavua. Next, we have two Sifrei Torah. One of them is going to be Parsha HaChodesh. One of them is going to be Rosh Chodesh, right? So if you have two more Sifrei Torah, one Parsha HaChodesh and one Rosh Chodesh, which one should come first? Obviously, the Rosh Chodesh comes first, because Rosh Chodesh comes every month, while Parsha HaChodesh only comes once a year. So the order of the reading of the Torah this Shabbos is going to be Parsha Shavua, Rosh Chodesh, Parsha HaChodesh. Interesting. Normally, we have 7 aliyahs in the Parsha Shavua and 1 aliyah in Maftir. This Shabbos, we're only going to have 6 aliyahs in the Parsha Shavua. Tazrea is going to have 6 aliyahs. The 7th aliyah is going to be Rosh Chodesh reading. And the Maftir is going to be from Perik Yud Beis and Shmos, HaChodesh Hazel Lochem Rosh Chodoshim. And the Haftorah is going to be the Haftorah of Parshas HaChodesh. Oh, well, you'll ask, what about Tadir v'she'eno Tadir Kodeh? That which is more common, that which is less common, you always put the more common first. So why do we read the Haftorah of Parshas HaChodesh and not Rosh Chodesh? Because Tadir v'she'eno Tadir Kodem only comes when you're doing 2 things. When you're doing 2 Sifrei Torah, one which is common and one which is less common, you do the more common first. But since we're only going to be reading one Haftorah, now the law of Tadir v'she'eno Tadir Kodem does not apply. And consequently, we read the Haftorah that connects with the Maftir, and the Maftir is Parshas HaChodesh, so the Haftorah is also Parshas HaChodesh. Now, in the reading of Parshas HaChodesh, we find the first pasuk, and the first pasuk says, HaChodesh Hazel Lochem Rosh Chodoshim. This month is for you, Rosh Chodoshim. Now, when you think about it, we call a month by the word Chodesh. But the word Chodesh doesn't mean month. The word Chodesh means new. Right? Chadash, Chidush. It means new. So now, how do we translate that pasuk in Perek Yud Beis and Shmos? HaChodesh Hazel Lochem Rosh Chodashim. This month for you is the head of all months. That's the way we translate it. But when you think about it, if you go to the origin and etymology of the word, like Rav Shamshon Ferler does, and you ask, Chodesh means new. So therefore, HaChodesh Hazel Lochem means this newness, this new is Lochem, for you. Rosh Chodashim, the head of all renewals. The month of Nisan is the first month of the year. Interesting. It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not the beginning of the new year. It's the beginning of the new months. The months come and go based on whether or not the moon catches the light of the sun. And when the moon catches the light of the sun, it reflects the light of the sun. And as Rashi points out, Moshe Rabbeinu was wondering, what does the newness look like? HaChodesh Hazeh, this new month, this new moon. Month comes from the word moon. What does it look like? So Hashem said, Kozera Eva Kadesh. I'm going to show it to you. And then you're going to make Kiddush Chodesh. Then you're going to make Kiddush Levana. We do Kiddush Levana as a reminder of that. That's not really Kiddush HaChodesh. But it's saying, I want you to look at this moon, and I want you to see that this is the beginning of a new reflection of the sun. The moon captures the sun's rays on a sliver of the moon. And the new moon appears as a little banana, a sliver, showing up in the sky. And when that is seen by the witnesses, they come to the Beis Din and they say, we've seen the new moon. And the Beis Din asks them all the questions that the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah speaks about how you saw the moon, what it looked like, and where did you see it, and so on and so forth. And if they accept the testimony, the Beis Din pronounces the new month, the new moon. Rav Shamshon Ferler says, this is indicative of our relationship with Hashem. We're not always sunshiny. We're not always at the top of our game. We're not always good. We're not always perfect. We're not even always bad, thank God. But every single month, we have an opportunity to look at the moon and say, just as the moon catches the reflection of the sun and shines out the dark sky, so too can the Jewish people catch the reflection of Hashem and the Torah and shine out in the world. That's the meaning of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This renewal is for you, Rosh Chodashim, the beginning of all renewals. Just as the Jewish people were renewed in the month of Nisan when he came out of Egypt, and it was a brand new renewal. And further, the month of Nisan brings out a renewal of all the vegetation on the earth, comes forth once again. It's a renewal, especially in Eretz Yisrael, which is what we're talking about. It comes forth. That's why there's a bracha on fruits that are grown from a tree in the month of Nisan. Shalochisai dovo ba'olamo, ubara bo brios tovos, be'ilonos tovim, le'anos behem b'nei adam. When you see the new fruit beginning to blossom, and by the way, this bracha isn't only said in Chodesh Nisan, it can be said any time up until the fruit becomes ready to be eaten. As long as you see a fruit tree, you can say that bracha according to the Mishnah Berurah. And consequently, even though it's optimally said in Nisan, especially in Eretz Yisrael, but you can say it even beyond that, because it's capturing a rejuvenation with an emphasis on the JEW nation. It's a rejuvenation. You have an opportunity to get better. You have an opportunity to reflect the sun, meaning Hashem. A famous story in the Gemara, one person came to Rabbi Akiva. He said to him, he said, tell me, how come I can't see God? So he said, I'll tell you what, come outside with me. He took him outside. He said, okay, look at the sun. Why to look at the sun? He said, I can't look at the sun. He said, why can't you look at the sun? It's blinding. I can't look at it. It hurts. I'll go blind. I can't look at the sun. So Akiva said to him, listen, if you can't look at the sun, which is one of God's creations, how you expect to see Hashem? That's only one of his minor creations, a little small star. In the billions of galaxies that exist in the infinite universe, reflection of Hashem's infinity. And consequently, when the moon catches the rays of the sun, it's a renewal. And so we say, this renewal is the beginning of all renewals. And interesting, you know what today was called? You know what today was? Today was called Yom Kippur Katan. Every single month, the day before Rosh Chodesh, in this case 2 days, because Thursday, right? We have Yom Kippur Katan, an opportunity to reevaluate how we've fared, done, acted in this past month, and catch the renewal. Start again. We are an amazing people. Okay, I wasn't that great in Adar, but now's Nisan, a new opportunity to catch the reflection of the sun and give it out and make the world a better place, a shinier place, a brighter place, a place in which the world can be a little bit better because I can be a little bit better. That's the message of the Parsha Achodesh Hazeh Lochem. This renewal is for you, the beginning of all renewals. Rishonu Lachem. It is the first for you, L'chodshei Hashana, for all the renewals of the whole year long. Pesach is an opportunity to get that renewal back, to capture once again the miraculous nature of the existence of the Jewish people and the existence of each and every one of us as individuals. It's an opportunity to reflect the godliness that's within us by capturing the essence of Hashem's teachings. So, Tazrea begins with birth, and Parsha HaChodesh speaks about what you do with that birth. Reflect the brilliant light that comes to us from the reflection of Hashem's Torah. And just as the moon reflects the sun, so shall the Jews reflect Hashem's teachings. Okay, so we're gonna just unmute everybody and see if we can't get some, anybody have anything to say, any comments? Let me get to that, the unmute. Okay. Here's my unmute button. Somewhere it disappeared here. Do me a favor, unmute yourself, maybe, because I don't see where the unmute button. What? Here it is. Unmute, okay. What's going on? I pressed the button to unmute. It's not doing it. What's going on? Come on, guys. Can you unmute yourselves, please? I can't see. If you want to unmute, you want to say anything? It should have said it right here. I thought I had it. It was here a minute ago. Now it's not here. Are you unmuted? Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful good Shabbos. Wonderful Shabbat Shalom and Baruch.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing everybody at the Shiur on Shabbos if you're in the neighborhood. We won't have a Zoom for a while, but we will have Pirkei Avos on Shabbos after Pesach, and next Shabbos, of course, is the Shabbos Hagadol Russia, which will be in the shul on Shabbos. There will not be a class on Thursday night on the Zoom.
Okay.
So in case this is it for some of you, we want to wish you a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, a wonderful Yom Tov. Enjoy the Rosh Chodesh coming up. Enjoy the beautiful Pesach that's coming up. Remember,
Thank you.
it's a simcha.
You too. Thank you. Amen.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You too, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Wonderful Shabbos. By the way, I'll just report to you that when I came back from Eretz Yisrael just 2 days ago, there's always the evil people in our neighbors who try to do us in, but despite all the tzaras, we never give up people. We're always renewing. Exactly what this Parsha Chodesh is about. So keep that in mind. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful Chodesh. We'll see you, Hashem, in the future. Have a good Shabbos.
Okay.